but don't be afraid of the hard work. That's another thing I always say to people is that in all the hardship, being broke, having no money, like that all gave me character, paying for college, always having a job, paying for medical school, like all of that. It made me who I am today. And my life would have been easier, but I wouldn't be the person I am. So therefore, I don't think I would trade those set of experiences, loss, challenges, and hardships.
I can't agree more. I think that the times that I went through really developed me as well, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I remember, just packing my car and just driving to a city. The car didn't get a reg owner warrant because it didn't qualify, and they were like, "Well, we can do the car on Monday," and I was like, "Well, I've booked the ferry for Friday, so I have to go." And like, it's not the most intelligent thing to do, and it's not it wasn't a legal way to do it, but I just went because I had to like set things in, and then I remember, yeah, trying to pay for the bills, and I worked all these other random jobs. I was washing dishes. I was trying to sell. Well, we call them jandals in New Zealand. They call them thongs in Australia, but I think in America they call them flip flops. I was working
Yes.
for Javianas trying to sell them, and I did all these different jobs. I tried my hand at modeling. I wasn't tall enough, and then I actually did a TV presenting job, and then I did that, and it just didn't really sit well, but I just kept trying all these things and doing these things, and I feel like not enough people, and I have worked with a few and also just observed in my daily life, like I find that the people coming up, like teenagers and stuff like that, are kind of almost opting out to really applying themselves because
Yeah.
they're seeing so. I feel like it could be many things, but I just feel like they kind of struggle to like look people in the eye and have a conversation. These kind of like real world skills because they're spending so
Yeah.
much time online. Like they're on Snapchat, they're posting these random like selfies of the sky and just saying what they're doing, like, just at home, what about you? And like, it's not really meaningful conversations, but also they're seeing all these people, like a 18-year-old billionaire doing this and doing that. So they feel like, well, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
why would I try and do something when someone's just doing something that's so much more amazing than me? I'm just gonna, keep doing what I'm doing and just like cruise on by. But I think I was lucky. I was fortunate to live in a time where I didn't compare myself to other people online, and I was just like, well, I think I can do it. So I'm just going to pack my car and go, and just
Yes.
try and see what happens. I feel like
Yeah.
that there's a decrease in that, and this isn't backed by anything that I've read in research because I don't really read this type of research. I read fitness research, but I just feel like it's just so common these days for people to
Yeah.
actually not apply themselves as much, and even in the fitness
Yeah.
space they're trying to look at taking peptides. They're looking at trying to take, different compounds to boost their. And I'm like, just get in the gym and start working out and just see what happens first. Let's
Yeah.
let's worry
Yeah.
about all that
Yeah.
other stuff later on. But like people are just trying to, I don't know, get these kind of shortcuts without doing the work, without prioritizing proficiency.
Exactly. And it's so true. Like I talk about this exactly what you said is this self-absorption. Like, there's so many kind of books that play with this theme of like the selfie generation. And like, there's a researcher who in the chapter, The Pillar on Present, I talk about what's changing in the world. Like, and there's a researcher, she talks about the shallowing hypothesis and how everything is shallow from our connections to the way we read and even like reading online. We skim things and then people are actually like highly inaccurate in the way that they're perceiving information compared to reading
Hmm.
something from a book and like how you visually input information in your brain, it's better on a paper than printed paper than looking at something online. And we're consuming all of our information in like short form videos. So like, when I'm being given information about like creating videos online, they're like, keep it to less than 30 seconds, keep it to less than 15 seconds. And the number just
Man.
gets smaller and smaller. First it was 3 minutes. And then it
Yeah.
got 1 minute. And so I'm noticing just in the last 2 years, the advice that I'm getting is make it shorter and shorter. I'm like, what is it going to be? And then they're like, oh, you have to capture. I mean, you're the expert on this, but you must capture people's attention in 3 seconds because they're on to the next. And so
Mm.
we don't have attention spans, and these kids, like, I love them because I'm raising them. So, but the idea that they can get, or that they should get amazing things without the hardship, because it's not shown online, right? Like, all we're hearing about is like, 10-year-old YouTubers who make 20 million a year because looking at
Mm.
toys. And you're like, okay, that is the minority. And, their
Yeah,
surveys have come out that more kids would rather be YouTubers than astronauts. And that was never the case. Like people
I read
aspire
that.
to do, and yeah, I mean, look, I think it's great, like also, but having like being a YouTuber, but it's a lot of work and it's a full-time profession. So like if you're going into it, go for it. But just know that like that you're not getting the 20 million unless you're willing to commit and dedicate yourself.
Yeah, and years of your life to that too. Like
Yeah.
the whole kind of thing of YouTube, it's well, it depends on the YouTuber, but they don't really show the struggle. But the only
Yeah.
the best way to do it is to look at their oldest videos, and you can see often how long they've been posting, and maybe they've come to popularity in the last 6 months or 3 months, but there's like 10 years of catalog of them
Yes.
uploading 100 views, 200 views, like no one watching at all.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
very
Yes.
yeah. It also is a very challenging job.
Yes. And I would say like whatever interests you profession wise, I think the one question, and I'm also realizing this from my own personal journey and the endeavors that I take on, is sometimes we're so excited to do something and there's nothing wrong in just jumping in. But if I would give advice looking back, for example, even writing this book, it was years and years and years of research and then writing and then editing. And I don't think I had any idea of what I was walking into and how long it would be, how grueling it would be, how many sacrifices I would make, like on top of, raising family, working full time patients, media,
Mm.
talks that I give, teaching. I had no idea. I was just like, I want to do it. And I think sometimes you have to just jump in. And maybe if you were to gather the information, like kind of like being a parent, if somebody told you how hard it was, you're like, no, thank you. So maybe sometimes we don't want to know, right? Because maybe we wouldn't do it. But what I would say, having been through this experience and now on the other side, one part of proficiency is also just finding out what the grunt work, what the scut work looks like. And if you can handle the worst day or year or stretch of what your dream profession is and you're still willing to do it, then by all means go into it. But know what the lowest points can possibly be and know that how long they could possibly last. But if once you know that and you go in, you're fine.
That's such a great way to look at it because often we look at it the other way around, and it's like, what is the best thing, and then we just strive for that. But then the grunt work comes and hits you day by day.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
the grunt work of YouTubing is writing scripts. It's it's editing. It's finding people to get involved. It's doing all these things. But you just see these views and this fame and this money, and you're
yeah,
like, oh, that sounds so great.
yeah,
But you're not
yes,
ready at all for the work. I see that a
yes.
lot.
And I think what's so helpful about knowing the hardest part of it is the way that I look at it is because when I hear people talk, they'll mention a famous person, they'll mention how much resources and money they have, and then they get very
Mm.
bitter and down about the other person. And oh, they just have help. Of course, they have a staff, they have a bunch of nannies, and like, oh, they look fine, they look great because, they're a celebrity. And of course, they have all the money for the celebrity fitness trainers. And like, there's always kind of excuses of, I couldn't ever achieve that. Granted, that person has all of those things, a full staff and blah, blah, blah. But you're not looking at the fact that they're not with their families, they're working maybe 18 hours a day. And like,
Mm.
so if you want their life, then think about every sacrifice that they made to get there. And are you willing to take that on? And if you can't, then you know what? You need to be quiet and give props and be like, you know what? All the more power to you. Instead, I see people hating on successful people rather than to be like, good for you. I'm comfortable staying home and going to bed by 8:30. Like if, because I have friends who are they own it. They're like, I have no ambition. I'm very comfortable with whatever I have. And to me, that's good for you. At least you're happy. The
Yeah.
unhappiness comes from the dissonance of, I want to be here, but I'm here, right? And I would say if you're there and you're happy with it and you're not willing to put in the work to bridge that gap, then own it and be at peace with yourself. And and we're not. And that's why we're so unhappy is that restlessness and that tension between who I am and who I think I should be, not even who I want to be. Maybe I don't
Mm.
want to be that YouTuber, but maybe I just want their lifestyle because I think other people value it. And if I become that person, then they'll respect me.
Yeah, that dissonance is, I think, bigger than it ever has been because we would never have, seen someone back in the day who lived in Dubai and lived this crazy life because we just never would have met them, or even in
Yeah.
the same
Yes.
country. We maybe wouldn't have rubbed shoulders with people that are living this certain lifestyle that you would potentially want to attain, but now we're surrounded by it. You can just scroll it, and then the more that you see it, like the more you watch these videos of successful people stepping out of Lamborghinis and, you know, going into their mansion, then the more that will just continually show you. So then you have this disparity as well of what real life is like your real life, and then other people's
Mhm.
lives, and then yeah, it kind of results in in unhappiness. Sue, thank you
Yeah,
so
and
much for. Oh, sorry, you go.
oh, I was going to say unhappiness personally and also within your peer groups because then your friends are like, "Oh, yeah, you think you're doing well? Now, there's someone who's got 10 times more followers than you do." So then you get put down even indirectly. No one's trying to hurt you, but then they put you kind of you feel like they're putting you in your place rather than celebrating you. So then I think that then it starts to trickle and your own peer group judges you. And I feel like that's the other thing is like being online where if you do have an online business, everyone is always critiquing somebody based on how many followers because it's all public. Like it's almost become your social standing. Like maybe back in the old days was like what kind of family you were born into, what kind of name you were born into, and the idea of meritocracy, can you earn, but just I think being judged in such a public way where everyone can see, and it almost becomes in some social circles like what your value and worth is. Like sometimes I'll be spending time with like a group of influencers and everybody knows the stats of the other person, and it's so weird to me, but
It's so weird.
how we judge each
It's
other.
such a
Yeah.
stupid metric. It's such a stupid metric. I can't. Yeah, I can't stand that world. And like as like I get grouped into the fitness influencer space, and fair enough. You know, I'm a fitness person who posts daily or more, and but every time I've been in this group setting, I've never really felt like at home. I've never felt like this is what I do because, you know, and this is nothing against them at all, but I just feel like I don't value the same things. You know, I'm not really, I never really started posting, and this is probably the same as you, you know, to have X amount of followers or to have, you know, this amount of reach and stuff. Like, I only started posting really when I realized that it helped me to get clients, which helped me
Hmm.
to, you know, propel my career and, you know, and help more people and, you know, have the satisfying feeling of making a difference. And I know that
Yes.
sounds quite cheesy, but and sometimes I have been, you know, I'd like to get this milestone of followers and all that kind of stuff, but I was never breaking my back over it and like
Yes.
feeling like
Yes.
I'm above someone that only has 100K. Like, oh, how embarrassing, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, it was never like that. It was just, yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're often chasing the wrong things because
Yes.
there's people that run businesses with 20,000 followers that are much more successful than people with millions,
Yes.
you know, but then people will look
Yes.
at this million, you know, this person has a
Yes.
million followers and think, oh, they must be successful and stuff like that. But
Yes.
followers don't really pay the bills, you know, like it depends
Yes.
on what you're doing with it and like what value you're providing on the back of that. So
Yes.
often, you know,
That's
people are striving for things that don't really mean anything.
Yes, and that's such a beautiful way to put it is that like followers don't pay the bills and no disrespect to the followers that are like engaging with your content or consuming
Mm.
it, but to be very intentional about what you do and why you do it and what your return on investment is and what you're hoping to do and to not break your back or to not, to like they say to you're missing the forest for the trees. Like what was the big picture goal and
Mm.
um, chasing the wrong metric of success. And so I think part of purpose, part of all of these P's is defining what success looks like for you, becoming very intentional, and then being okay with letting go of certain things to be like, okay, like, I've come to terms with the fact that I'm never going to be getting, a million followers. That's not my goal. That's not my aim. My goal and aim is to be content, to feel like I'm impactful, and then to be happy and to live a balanced life. And right now I might be in a moment of imbalance because the book is coming out, but I'm a private person, and at the end of the day, I want to enjoy my work. I love to travel, my family, my friends, and I want to get back to a simpler life. I feel like we're moving in this direction where we're becoming distorted. Our sense of perception of reality is distorted. Fame,
Mm.
money, success, everything is warped now. And I do think that like we need to turn back the clock a little bit. Like I love the fact that we can all meet each other and learn cool things about each other through online, but it can't be the only way that we nourish ourselves.
Yeah, it like doesn't give you any sustenance. It's not nourishing for the soul. What
Yes.
I've been a big fan of probably the last few years, and I'll wrap up soon with this, but has been just like card games and board games, and
Love
it sounds pretty lame, but
that.
like it's actually so fun. like playing
Yes.
Monopoly Deal, and like for Christmas I got like some card games and stuff because my family kind of knows me and all this kind of stuff. And like you learn so much about people as well, like friends and family. You laugh and all these kinds of things. Like, but on the other side of the spectrum, like it's nothing to really post about. It's nothing to be like, oh man, I stayed at home and played board games with my family. Like it's
Yeah.
it sounds nerdy, it sounds lame, but like to be honest, it's probably one of the most memorable times of like these last holidays. Like my family came over from New Zealand and we were playing Exploding Kittens, which is this game. Anyway, it's really cool. But we played it and like we couldn't wait to play it at night when the kids were asleep, and it was
That's
like super
awesome.
fun. But you know, it's not going out to the clubs and popping bottles and you know taking photos in front of this
Yeah.
wall and blah 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 blah. And yeah, I feel like the simple things in life should be prioritized, like having a simple happy life, because that is what sustains you. That is what makes you not feel lonely in a room of people, because you have genuine
Yes.
connections. And as
Yes.
you said, those are the pieces that are missing in people's lives quite a lot of the time.
Absolutely. And being able to find joy and meaning, like you said, in relationships and then in your own hobbies, in your own interests, and being able to amuse yourself, not needing something from the outside, whether it's validation or stimulation, right? Like we're either looking for approval or we're looking for stimulation in some way. So to be able to be self sustaining and say, if I have access, and to me, I think one of the biggest journeys in all of this is if I have all of this, great, it's a bonus. So looking at the success and the fame as like the icing on the cake, but it's not the whole cake.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're getting a little bit confused these days.
When I first thought of doing a podcast in 2019, I wrote down everything that I wanted to achieve with the show. And one thing I never wrote down was to spam you with ads of products that I never really used myself. However, I did write down that I wanted to grow it as big as possible and have as many interesting people on the show as I could. To help make that happen, all I ask is that you leave a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to this episode on and share it with someone that you know it will benefit. If you want to support myself even further, and more importantly, your body transformation, and are interested in having me as your coach to help you achieve the results that you just can't seem to achieve on your own, you can visit teamrockashby.com to see what program fits you best.